Hi everybody, my name is Neil McNally. I'm director of Rosenthal, the Malibu Estate Wines, and I'm a certified wine educator. Today we're going to go over a little bit on wine etiquette, Wine 101, and give you a little history about wines, and hopefully to help you sell the wines and present them. First thing a lot of people wonder about, especially in California and Washington and everything, is the variety on the grape, variety on the wine. This wine right here is a Chardonnay. Now, people talk about Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon, Zinfandels. That is the name of the grape. Not the name of the region, but the name of the grape. There are different kind of grapes, just like there are different kind of apples, Macintosh, etc. With grapes, there's different kind of grapes. If it says the name of the varietal on the label, it has to be at least 75% of that varietal. If it drops below that, it cannot be called that varietal. It could be 100%. Most Chardonnays are 100%. A lot of Cabernets are blends as far as that goes. So this is a Chardonnay, the name of the grape. This is a Sauvignon Blanc, name of the grape. Well, in the New World, what do you call it if it isn't at least 75% of that grape? There's a few different things. You can have interesting names, like insignia or that kind of thing. You could just call it red wine. In this case, there's a term they use for Bordeaux varietals called meritage or meritage, if you want to do the French style. Go easy way as far as that goes. This is not at least 75%, or even if it is, it's not called that. So that's what they do in California and Washington, too, for that matter. It's called meritage or meritage, and it's actually an association. Now, to open the wines, you don't usually have to do it in front of your people, but we're going to show you how to open the wines as fast and as easy as possible. We do have a screw top. Love screw tops. People think that used to be not top of the line anymore. That was your cheap wines, but now there's wines coming out $100 a bottle that are in screw tops. I love them. You don't have to worry about the cork going bad. It's so easy. I'll give you a little tip on opening screw tops too, as far as that goes. A lot of times you'll want to grab it like this and twist, which works fine, but sometimes you'll find that this doesn't even work that well, and you need almost pliers to get it off. If you grab it down here, here's a little trick. Grab it down here and twist. It's way easier. So that's my tip 101 on screw tops. Even those can be hard. This is the one that's going to scare you, though, for a lot of people, is using the screws, is using the cork, excuse me. You're going to have on the planes this opener here, or a reasonable facsimile. It does not have a knife. As you know, you can't have knives on board. Here's a corkscrew with a knife. No good. You're all going to be getting one of these. This is very easy to open the foil with this. Put it right on top and squeeze it, not too tight, but hard enough. Twist the bottle. Make sure the foil, twist it at the top so the foil doesn't spin. It only takes a few turns and it'll come right off that easily. Put it in your pocket. Don't worry about that. Push that shut. Open that. Pull this out. Here's going to help you because that's what scares people on these. There's no center. Notice it spins open. It's open in the middle, but I'll show you a little easy way to do this. Put it on like so, right on the edge. This will self-center it for you, and this doesn't need to be exactly in the center anyway. You tilt it up, push down a little bit, but not too hard. You don't want to push the cork in if you can help it. Twist it. Almost all the way in. About to there. This is part of the Zen part of it that is a little hard to explain sometimes. But you pull it slightly out instead of up, or else everything will go that way. If you think out, it'll go up. As easy as that. Hi, we're going to talk now about serving temperatures on wines. The average serving temperature, when you think of champagne, that's perfect. You think cold. You want it probably 45 degrees, maybe out of the refrigerator, which is often 35 degrees. Put it in the ice bucket, which you're not going to be doing on the plane, but in general, put it in the ice bucket, keep champagne cold. Champagne's easy. A lot of dessert wines you want very cold also. Dessert wines being the very sweet wines, sauternes, and things like that. Not red port so much, but ice wines from Okanagan and Washington State make some nice ones also. Chardonnay and these wines, Generally not as cold. If you have it at 35 degrees, or as I say, a degree above absolute zero, like some people like their wines, if that's what they really want, of course, that's fine. But slowing the temperature down, getting it cold, really mutes the wine, and it doesn't taste as good. When I judge wine tastings, even the whites we taste at room temperature. And room temperature, we'd like it to be about 70 degrees, not 85 degrees. So these we'd like actually about 45 to 50 degrees would be optimum. If you wanted at 32, if you want to put ice chips in your red wine, that's absolutely, of course, the customer's always right, or you're always right as far as that goes. But I'm telling you the average, these would be warmer than champagne. I, at a restaurant, don't ask for an ice bucket with those. I don't want it. Red wines. Red wines are supposed to be what some people say room temperature, but if your room's 85, it's not optimum. It gets too warm. The alcohol comes out. They'll start tasting not as good. So what a standard cellar temperature was, and that came from Europe, where everything was pretty cold, was actually more like 65 degrees. Optimum storage for most wines is 55 degrees. That's why you'll find wine bars that are actually called 55 degrees, because that's where you store the wine. So what you bring it out at and what you have it at on the plane, it is what it is. You're using this glass for the most part, from what I understand. These are called sometimes O glasses or stemless glasses. They're great. And it's not a problem at all. One good thing about the stem is for white wines, if you hold it down at the bottom of the stem, it doesn't warm up the glass. Red wines, it's not an issue. Sometimes I want my red wines warmed up if they're too cold anyway. You'll have your bottle. You'll pour it in the back. But if you're bringing it out and pre-pour or re-pouring for your customer, I should say, good to have a napkin. If you don't have this style, any kind of napkin's good. You want to pour it, bring it out, and if they're interested, have the label out so they can see it. It's just a little added bonus to do it professionally and bring it out as far as that goes like that. So they can see the label, and you pour it like this where they can see the label. You're going to re-pour. Fill it up about half, if that. Right at the end, twist it. That'll stop a lot of the dripping. Take your napkin, wipe it off, and you're done. I'm going to talk a little bit now about reading a wine label. In New World wines, as I mentioned, quite often it is listed the varietal on the label. Let's start at the top of a label. It's not always listed from top to bottom, but let's start that way. Usually, but not always, we'll have the name of the producer up here. Rosenthal, the Malibu Estate in this case. Surfrider in that case. Maybe Chateau Lafite or Clicquot from a champagne standpoint would be the name of the producer. Next would be the vintage. And vintage means the year the grapes were harvested. Not the year the grapes were bottled, not the year the wine was sold, but the year the grapes were harvested. Next will usually be the name, in this case, of the varietal. But this one is a Meritage, remember? It's not 75% of the varietal, so it doesn't have that on it. This one does, Sauvignon Blanc. That's the good old comfort factor. Cabernet Sauvignon, Sauvignon Blanc, Zinfandel. In this case, it says red wine because it can't be listed the varietal on it. Usually they'll have the alcohol content on it. In this case, 14 plus. You'll usually see wines anywhere from about 12 to 15, 16 for regular wines. Fortified wines, where they actually add more alcohol, for dessert wines in particular, will be 18 to sometimes 20% alcohol. Sometimes you won't see a vintage. And if you don't see a vintage, that means it was a multi-vintage, usually from 1 year to the next. They'll add actually to both. Fine Champagne does that also. Often you'll see a region, but not always. In this case, you see Malibu Newton Canyon. That is the AVA, the American Viticultural Area in this case. In this case over here, it is Edna Valley. Now you can list wines that could just say U.S. on it. It could have the state listed, California or Washington State. Or in this case, it could have a county too, or in what's called an American Viticultural Area, like Napa Valley would be, Columbia Valley. In this case, Malibu Newton Canyon, or in this case, Central Coast of California, Edna Valley. They don't have to be in the same state. If you look at Columbia Valley, that goes from Washington State to Oregon. So hopefully this helped you a little bit on your knowledge of wine labels. Hi, I know you can't actually try the wines that you're serving in the cabin, but hopefully this gives you an idea